Oh, that took a long time. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I tried to time that so we'd be bob on time, and I got it completely wrong. Good evening to Ian, and good night, good evening, good morning to Al. Al, I don't know what I'm saying.
Good morning.
I
Good
am,
morning.
I am zonked, whatever you want to say, because of having to set up digital classrooms for teachers. It's something that's starting from 7 in the morning and going definite to 7 at night for me. Panic in the nation. It is
Snowflake.
taking a lot of work. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah.
Snowflake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
God.
Definitely.
When I
Definitely.
was young, it was nothing. We'd do this every day. I used to walk to school every day on a horse in the snow. Took me 4 days to get there. Kids today
Yeah.
just don't know how lucky they got it.
No, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. I must just suck it up. Well, I tell you what I had in the inbox this morning. Tell you what, which started my day very, very well, was a death threat. And
There's no
you
better
know,
way.
there's no better way to start a day, is there? So on Sunday, I got really quite angry about the number of private pilots I saw posting about how they were going flying, how that was good, how they were self-isolating. So I wrote something up like that. And this morning, so I've had a couple of emails where people have argued with me, and that's fine. So I've said, the conversation has to start. But this morning I had the one in all capital letters wishing me a happy death. And were I in America, that would be happening, because what do I know? So what do you do? What do you do with
Was
something
it signed
like
D. Trump?
that? It was signed. It was signed, and it was the name on the email address. So it's like, oh, okay, well, that's good. So
Are your
yeah,
drones
that
locked
was,
and loaded, ready for the combat?
oh yeah. Yeah, well, that was an interesting start to the day, but straight away it does make you think that one of the arguments I made was, if people are probably on evening to everybody there, that if private pilots have this sort of attitude, should they really have a license? And I
Are they a
still
fit and
think
proper
not.
person? Is there a fit and proper person test in the USA for a pilot?
I should think there has to be. There's everywhere I've been, even Australia. There was one. So that alone is a surprise, isn't it? So yeah, so very interesting. That definitely rung a bell with a lot of people, and we had the best day on SES News that we've had the whole year for traffic. So it was only me being angry on a Sunday. That's all it was. So anyway, that started my day today. Well, let's catch up with how the lockdown's going with you two before we delve into any news. What's happening with you, Ian? Let's go with Ian first.
Yeah, I'm on. I think we're officially on week 2. Unofficially, I think I'm week 3, and it's become very much the norm now, in the sense of you're not allowed to go out. If you do go out, you get chased by police with drones. We've seen police use drones this week to herd the general public back into for their own safety. I'm just waiting for them to don on some special uniforms and return back to the 1940s, just like certain parts of the world. But yeah, it's been interesting. It's okay, but we have had some issues by the looks of it, some police forces taking it too far. And it has raised a few eyebrows in both. On Twitter, you've had a certain police force in a certain area saying that they've arrested 5 people on one day and they're taking them all to court. And one of them just went out for a drive in his car. And you sort of think, okay, and they're trying to argue that that's potentially putting people at risk, because if you crash, you need help. However, I'd argue there's a far larger risk than all of the men in the country sitting at their home with their wives saying, right, you can put that shelf up this weekend, or you can go and do that. And you've got lots of men who really aren't that good at DIY trying to do it for the first time. So I think there's a far greater risk of people injuring themselves at home at the moment than they are in a car. So
that would be interesting. I bet there will be a bit of an increase, like your ironing board accidents and all the other accidents that Bruce always quotes whenever danger is put in front of them of drones. I bet there'll be no end of an increase in general household accidents.
Yeah, and it's got silly. I keep getting into arguments with people on this a little bit, because look, I am fundamentally isolating. I've gone out I think I've gone out 3 times for a walk in 7 or 10 days. That's it. So I'm doing the most I can possibly do. But on the flip side, I do not like this erosion of general liberties, and I don't like police forces arresting people. I think if a police force pulls someone over and says, "Where you going? What you up to? Are you aware of?" Educate, inform, keep the public on side. Well, they're saying what you're doing. However, when you've got police forces saying we've nicked 5 people and one of them went for a ride in his car, I think that's getting a little bit extreme. But overall, everything is okay. We're starting to see some shops open back up. Actually, I'm starting to see more fast food places open up.
Really?
The ones, well, you're allowed to open up for takeaway food, but a lot of these closed in the first week or so, not knowing where they stand. And obviously, as this rolls on, people are starting to look at where they can do things and what they can do. Tesco's got riot shields on every till now. So if you do want to go in and kick off, you're perfectly fine. There's plenty of plastic to bounce off. And yeah, I think we're going to be in it for the next 3 months. That's where I think we're at.
And Uncle Bruce, what's happening with you in this?
Well, funny you should mention about this, driving around, and because there was a big car accident just outside of town this morning. A truck crashed into a car and they had to get the rescue helicopter in. And when we went driving yesterday to go to the doctor, we drove probably 30 kilometres because our doctor's out of town, and we saw hardly a vehicle on the road. So how on earth, with such a light traffic load, can you have a collision like that? You've got to, seriously, what are they doing? So there is a certain amount of truth to the fact that if you don't need to drive, you shouldn't drive, because you're just going to put further burden on the health service when something goes wrong. But I think the police are going to get all these powers, and when the whole thing dies down, they're going to say, right now, let's go for the drone flyers. We've practiced on all these itinerant bloody lockdown dodges. We'll get into the drone flyers now. We're enjoying this extra power. But it's all kind of strange.
New Zealand, how much extra power will be residual extra power won't go away, I wonder.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive move to socialism all around the world. Capitalism has been set aside, and now we've got governments pouring money out and giving people sort of standard income. Every week they get paid a certain amount of money. It's a universal income thing. Socialism has been right up in the last few weeks. It's probably going to be a long time before capitalism catches up, because at the end of this, we'll have a lot of very large corporations with no money, no demand for their products and services, and a whole lot of people out of work. So it's going to be a massive transition from extreme capitalism to socialism. So there's going to be changes to the political climate as well. And in New Zealand, we're very lucky. We're fortunate. Our goal is to get rid of the virus. And we're probably unique in the world that because we're an island nation, we can close our borders off completely. And aside from a few Armenian boat people who might take the trip, we are going to be able to say, right, let's isolate everybody. So in theory, the people that have got the virus now will either get better and no longer be carriers, or they'll die and no longer be carriers. So the virus could be eliminated entirely from this country if everybody sticks to the lockdown. After that, we can then go about business as usual with closed borders, and we can rebuild our economy, we can get things going, we can remain isolated from the rest of the world while America and the UK struggle with this for months, possibly a year or more. And so when they come out of this thing, we'll all be back to normal, and we'll be in a really strong position to take advantage of this economically and socially.
New Zealand land. Well, over here, I don't know if I can't remember. Stop me if I said this last week, but they've already charged a couple of bar owners. Did I go with that story last week?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they're being anyone that has kept the bar open, even if you shut the doors and have a lock in, they're being charged with attempted murder. That's the charge for that. We've had several queues outside of supermarkets where people were refusing to separate themselves. So rubber bullets have flown left, right, and centre. And today, really getting serious about social distancing in an incredibly stupid move, in my opinion. They've banned the sale of condoms.
Well, you can't do that if you're staying 2 meters apart unless you're incredibly well endowed.
Well, yeah. So yes. So quite the logic of that, I don't know. So, but hello there, Gerator. But basically, people are behaving and separating here, and we're taking it 2 weeks at a time. We go to every 2 weeks. We don't get it. There's more of a chance that when we do get it, the emergency services will be in a place to to sort us out after the initial rush.
Yeah, and that's the problem we're facing. You know, we haven't had that rush yet. You know, and it is impressive to see the level of engineering and everything. We've had some amazing stuff happening in the last week, 2 weeks. The likes of all the F1 teams getting involved, and cooperation on a mass level to help the NHS out. Something that was quite scary. I was informed today that we only actually had 14 of these specialist critical beds in the UK before this started, with all of the gear necessary to deal with people with major breathing and lung issues. And there's going to be over, I think, well, the plan is to have thousands of these. So I think it's weird because, as Bruce said, we have had a drastic move to socialism. I'm expecting communism next, Bruce. That's the next one on my list. It's the triple box, and then we go back around.
This is all a plan by North Korea.
But it's interesting from my point of view to see how people will react when we do go back to mass capitalism, because I think we probably have been the last 20 years, and more so in probably the 2000s, but as much now, that capitalism has been king and top of the tree without any doubt, without any hint. And people have suddenly started to sit back and go, is this all worth it? Now we've all had to work at home. Now we've all had to do things. Even I've had a very different perspective on things and thought, I don't necessarily want to go back to the way things were either, in some of the things I was doing, and it's going to be interesting to see how the world will change, and whether home working will become more reasonable, whether people will be more flexible and more, okay, let's do what we need to do and not have all that greed. Because the last 10 years, it's been 20 years, it's been greed, isn't it? Work, earn, spend. And you know, retail is not going to just pick up after this. And it's going to hit the drone industry, and we're going to see it. And people are not going to come out of this and say, right, I'm going to spend lots of money. A lot of people are being laid off. A lot of people are gone on this thing in the UK, which is called furlough. There's all sorts of different things that is happening to people, and money is going to be tight. And even when they come out of it, people aren't instantly going to go, oh, I'm okay to spend my wages now. Everyone's going to be a little bit more cautious.
I think we'll save a bit more now, won't we?
Yeah.
I think saving will suddenly become a thing.
It's hit our family. You know, I've lost my wife's wage. My wife's wage was self-employed. She doesn't qualify for the government scheme because she's only recently been self-employed. So, you know, we've lost one earner's wage in our family. It's hit us hard. It is what it is. We can't do anything about it. And I do think we'll look back and go, I don't need to do all of these things. So we're going to do a bit more realistic, hopefully, on what we do.
You know? Well, let's go. We're supposed to talk about drones. Should we talk about drones? Well, one of the things I'll go with the fact that Airbus have shuttered their experiment in urban air mobility, VOOM, I think it was called, which was helicopters. But it was seeing how people would travel and just using the helicopter rather than the fancy electric thing. And they shuttered that with saying it's COVID-19, but people behind the scenes tell me actually no, they discovered, guess what? Helicopters haven't properly worked for the last 60 years, moving people around cities without a lot of money to pay, and they're probably not going to work in the future. So they've shut it.
Fairly Rotodyne, that would have worked. Fairly Rotodyne, that would have been the secret. But interesting.
But you know that
Airbus. You go first. You go first. Come on.
I was just going to say the Fairly Rotodyne will have exactly the same problem as the Google delivery drones had in Australia. It was noisy as all noisiness. Yeah.
But you notice Airbus also, another one of the ventures, or one they're highly vested in, has also been declared bankrupt, or is declaring bankruptcy, and that's OneNet, the satellite internet service. They've just declared they're going to file for bankruptcy, and Airbus is quite a big holding in that as well. So is Airbus really feeling the pinch?
I think a lot of these things, the problem is when money's been flowing around, a lot of these things are tax dodges, tax holes. You know, the money has to go somewhere. And as Gary alluded to earlier, you're going to have a lot of companies come out of this situation with very low balance sheets and all in very difficult positions. So it's not hard to see these pet projects that were being funded just be tossed to the wayside, and you've seen it across the board as well, aren't you?
Well, I see VC funded things aren't eligible in America for their bailout, stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a whole queue, there's a whole list of companies in our industry, isn't there? It's going to be struggling.
Yeah,
But given the social distancing thing and the fact that people don't want to face-to-face, will drone delivery suddenly take off? Because you can order your stuff to be delivered. You don't have to see anyone, touch anyone. Maybe this is the breakthrough the drone delivery industry needs to get itself going.
I still think
can't
there's
disagree with
simpler
that.
solutions. I still think there's simpler solutions. The man in the van isn't the risk, is he?
And trebuchets are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
The social distancing works when the parcel's left on the doorstep, and we're even getting that in the UK now, where the couriers are, messaging you, we're outside. You nod them, they put the thing on the doorstep, they sign the tablet, they show it to you through the window, and they walk off. And we've got better ways of doing it, and you can even sign acceptance on some of the apps now as well. We've got DPD in the UK, and they've revolutionised parcel delivery over here. That you get a text message, you got a live app showing you where the driver is, you get a message to say when he's coming, you get a 5-minute warning, you get a message to say he's around, he's outside, and all it's going to take is a little bit of tweaking on that. And I still think there's nothing can be cheaper than a man in a van at the end of the day.
Or a van without a man could be cheaper.
That is the next scenario, and that's the Telsa model, isn't it? The man in the van, where you walk up to the side of the van, you then scan your barcode onto the little machine on the side, and the door opens with your specific parcel in like a locker on the back already, which has been pre-moved by the onboard conveyor belt. Cool. There's got to be money there, isn't? That's got to be.
Now we know why Ian's building that little rover. It's a proof of concept.
It's a proof of concept. But
well,
no, it is
in Milton Keynes, isn't it? It's
Yep.
already there. They've got those Starships. Is it Starship? Whatever they are, they've got them in Milton Keynes. And Milton Keynes, I love Milton Keynes. People in the UK, if you're not from the UK,
how do they negotiate the roundabouts?
Oh, it's all fine, but the best thing about it is they designed it so pedestrians don't have to walk along roadsides. There's all sorts of walkways and flyovers and fly-unders and tunnels and all manner of things.
Yeah.
So it's almost made for those delivery robots. They have had since it was built in the 60s. They've had an infrastructure suitable for walking and cycling, and that once you've got that, then you're there. It's why not.
It is interesting, obviously it is having an effect. We've seen Airbus, this thing with Airbus, and Airbus have been in a dodgy position for a few years. It's hardly surprising, they're largely funded by Europe anyway. Skydio have shut down production. It's having an effect on the consumer drones. Skydio have ended production currently because they are in California, and where they are, obviously all the shutdowns are happening. It's had their effect. I believe DJI have shut down their repair centers. Same situation over there. You've now got Autel having supply issues with components. Again, that's off the back of their situation, which was January and February, and that's also hitting the computer industry as well. So, I think that there is going to be a shortage of product naturally anyway in the next month, let alone people not wanting to spend the money.
Lots of interest coming out of China to advertise with us. Thanks, China. Especially with all the nasty things Patrick says. So thanks, China. But
even after all the nasty things Patrick says.
So they are, they're planning getting ready to come back to work. But as we're all suggesting, who are they going to sell it all to?
They're clearly back.
Will they shrink their companies? What would it make sense? Bruce has always got a big business sense. You're bigbusiness.com. What would you do now with your big business with nowhere to sell it?
Well, this is interesting. We could move on to the conspiracy theory area, because there's so many people proposing so many reasons and justifications, and where to from here. One of them is that this will leave the West very much weakened economically, and there'll be very large companies with massive IP and value selling for pennies on the dollar because they've become bankrupt. And China can come in and basically an economic takeover of much of the Western world because they've got the money there. They've got trillions of dollars. They can just move in and they can buy what they want. And effectively, it's the Chinese annexing of the Western economy. So that's possible. But China, I think, is probably pretty lucky. It's got a pretty robust domestic economy now. There's a lot of companies living off their domestic earnings. It's not as reliant on exports as it once was. So I think that China, but like New Zealand, could effectively become somewhat isolationist and just rely, because they sell 20 million mobile phones a quarter in China, because Huawei were looking at because they've been basically locked out of the USA, but their domestic markets alone is enough to keep them going. So when you look at that, they could survive quite well and just wait out the West, because the West will be in such a shambles. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chinese government making moves to acquire some key Western industries and companies with their massive cash reserves that they've got at a time when no one can afford to say no.
It's funny you mentioned that, Bruce, because I was looking at an article, so a conversation came up, because there's been a few articles around this week. Are China lying about the amount of people who've died with regards to coronavirus? And there's a couple of interesting ones. And there was one earlier in the week about Chinacom mobile telephone company, and they said they'd lost they'd lost 80 or 90,000
21 million mobile phones. Prepaid, basically. Yeah,
they'd lost a lot of subscribers, but they had over. Was it nine? I can't remember how many subs it was. It was an incredible number, and the churn rate still worked out about 8 or 9%, which is normal for the phone industry. Vodafone in the UK lose about 13% of customers a year. That's perfectly normal. So they're clearly back at work. I don't know if you've noticed this, Bruce, because those of us who do this YouTube thing, you have. I get a lot of contact from various Chinese companies. Can you look at this? Can you review that? Most of it you don't do stuff with and much with. But you have some companies you deal with regularly as well, and they were very quiet from sort of October onwards. However, they are clearly back on it. I'm getting daily contacts from beginning of March onwards. We're back in, we've got this coming, we've got that. So regardless of what everyone thinks, whether the numbers are correct, they are working. They are back up and running. They're not full. They're not necessarily on it. If you look at, say, Gamers Nexus, they were talking about some of the motherboard manufacturers. They're only up to like 40% capacity, but they're much better than they were, and they're certainly back in action. And as Bruce says, it's going to be interesting to see how they capitalize on this, because by the time we get to the other side of this, they're going to be 100% back in action and ready to take full advantage.
Well, what do you do? Here we are. We're big company. Should I dare mention a 3-letter one? We're a big 3-letter company in China. What's our plan now? Do we just keep producing, or do we scale it back, or we just turn inwards to China? As Bruce has already said, it's a huge market. That can go forever. So we just do that, rather. Let's just wait it out, and we'll let the rest of the world sort itself out. What's the plan, chaps? What are we going to do?
We make respirators.
It is interesting. There's been a number of articles this week about the 3-letter company DJI. There's been one in Bloomberg, and a lot of talk about how they somewhat won the battle and lost the war with themselves, and where do they go from here. And I think there's a bit of a feeling of a changing of the wind, and I don't mean that DJI are going to lose. I think they will change their tact slightly. And as Bruce says, and you said earlier about the home market, the world doesn't revolve around America. Everyone keeps getting caught up in what happens in the US. There are far bigger markets at play. India is one of them. India is enormous. And I just get the feeling that there could be a bit of a change in the direction. Where DJI go, I don't know. I've been lucky to see some of the products over the years, and it's interesting to see when you read the articles, it's hard not to agree with some of the things about how they've devalued their own position in some ways on the products, because they've been fighting battles amongst their own product groups. And a classic example of that is the Mavic Mini, the Mavic Air. They're competing against themselves, and there is no one even beginning to get involved in it. You're going to, Skydio, Autel, Unique, their numbers are minuscule. They don't even come anything near to give DJI worth even looking at, and they're at the stage where their biggest problem is themselves. And I don't know where they're going to go now. I just don't know where they're going to go next.
Well, the Minis was a natural fit for the 250 grams, and the 250 grams was actually kind of their own making, along with the Danish. Yep. They were very pro that 250 grams. Yep. So that makes sense. It
does.
But but anything above that is going with regulations in the pipeline it makes less and less sense, doesn't it? Anything above 250 grams. So then it's a leap into the bigger commercial market. And to be fair, there's lots of really great Chinese companies producing big machines, much, much bigger than anything DJI produces. And they're having a fair crack at that whip, and they've kind of got that market now. We're talking 10 kilo lifting things or 15 kilo lifting things. And that is, there's your delivery drone. There it is there.
Unless turnkey is not as important there neither, and that's the part. What DJI are very good at is turnkey. Okay, and that's I don't think anyone can deny their products, for the most part, work extremely well out the box. There's a reason they sell so many. You can pick it up, you can fly with it. It does what it's meant to do. When it comes to large delivery vehicles, the simple out the box capability isn't as important. You're dealing with much more technical people, larger teams of people with bigger processes in place. So as you say, it doesn't have to be. If you look at the product ranges, if you look, the Mavic destroyed the Phantoms market. The Mavic Air destroyed the Sparks market. The Mavic Mini has destroyed the Mavic Air's market. So they keep digging themselves into a deeper hole somewhat, and that's somewhat where they're at today. And if this thing we've seen leaked images of happens, it has a hole it can fall into, but it's a bit like that iPhone that Apple release every year, which is that I can't remember what they've been calling them over the last few years. There's that cheaper iPhone, which no one really is bothered about. It's there for the guys who don't want to spend. It's
I think with DJI, they've had to do this though, because the market's reached saturation for the Phantom quite some time ago. So they had to bring out a new model with the Mavic and all better features, and then that market got saturated. So they're having, if you want people to keep buying, you've got to keep offering them new stuff. They're not just going to buy a new Mavic when they've already got one because they want one without scratches. You have to provide them with some extra bonus and some extra features. But I'm wondering if this whole situation now isn't actually going to hasten the change of drone regulation for the better, because suddenly we're going to, for example, enforcement is pretty much zero. I've been flying my drone up and down the street, not supposed to fly over the roads. There's no cars on the roads, right? And I've been flying it, in places where I shouldn't fly it. And in normal times, I'd get my ass kicked, but no one's worried at this stage because there's bigger problems on the plate. And the more I do that, and the more I do it without causing any injuries or deaths, or not many deaths, or any other problems, the more it proves that the regulation is actually somewhat over stringent and unnecessarily harsh, and that maybe it's time, like in Japan, where they're going to give these licenses for BVLOS operations. Maybe it's time we started loosening the rules a little bit and producing craft that can operate without people sitting in the cockpits, because tourism is going to be pretty dead. So international air travel is going to be so. In fact, there's no aircraft in the air here. The rescue helicopter is the only aircraft we've had. So now is the time for people and regulators to say, well, while the airspace is clear, let's just see what we can do with drones. Let's just, if we give them free rein, because the risk is never going to be lower, let's see what happens. I think savvy regulators would do that. Savvy governments would do that. I think
Richard alluded to some trial last week, didn't he? That they're going to do at this very time for that reason. But also it speaks to how we change airspace. It bothers me that private pilots are thinking they can get up and fly and do their own thing, and they still want their protected airspace and that. If it's a genuine emergency, no, shut the sky and shape the sky in such a way that the emergency helicopters and those vehicles are the vehicles that get through. It seems ridiculous that we still can do that to me. So there's got to be, there's got to be conversations up and down the scale of how we do our shopping, how we go to work, how we sort the sky out, how we use power, how vehicles pollute. I read a good thing today that suggested that anyone that's denying that if this does go to 2 or 3 months, anyone that is denying that man isn't causing climate change through emissions, there's going to be some clear data of how the sky changes in 3 months around the world. It's going to make a huge
but that's weather. Short term is weather, long term is climate. We'll see no climate changes related to this.
Not climate change. I didn't put that correctly. Not climate change, but the amount of carbon and stuff that's in the air. That'll be measurable. The amount of pollutants in the air.
Yes.
So but will we just rush straight back into capitalism, headlong back into?
I don't think we will. I think too many people have discovered that socialism, although it's a dirty word, has some benefits at times of need, and that it's a fairer system in some ways. I think capitalism's fair because the harder you work, the more money you make and the more return you get. But by the same token, this whole concept of having a degree of socialism to provide safety nets and security for society have been lost in the race for profits. Certainly in America. I think America's paying for that now. It's going to be crazy times over there. You can't afford healthcare. Well, I'm sorry, just go and sit in the gutter and die, please. But look at Sweden. Sweden's interesting because that's quite a socialist country in terms of healthcare and things, and their response to this thing's been very laid back. I'm quite surprised they don't have all this lockdown stuff going on, do they?
No.
But then maybe they're a little bit more of an ordered society that with that half a sniff of a lockdown, they'll kind of start doing that anyway. Maybe they're a society that doesn't need to be told.
All their health system is ready for it.
Remember that's the other thing.
That largely the only reason we're in lockdown is the UK's health system is not ready to deal with the volume. This isn't about people not catching this. Unfortunately, the big hype around this is everyone's going, we don't want to catch it. Everyone is going to get this. The reality is at some point, if they haven't already had this, until either a vaccine becomes available or there is something, all governments are trying to do is delay this mass onslaught for the health systems that can't cope. And I think that bit is being missed in the press, but perhaps they're fully capable of dealing with the worst case scenario, therefore they're happy to.
Well, maybe the Swedish are just so unsociable they just never get within 2 meters of each other anyway. Who knows?
Yeah,
I've never been to Sweden. No idea.
No.
Well,
they are separated by crinkly bits of land and all that sort of thing.
But they have saunas, don't they? They have saunas.
They do. It's a lovely
social
place.
distancing in a
place.
sauna. Yeah.
It's a lovely place.
It is. No, sorry, Karen. No, I was just going to say it is interesting. It is interesting, isn't it?
It is. Well, I mean, the sky's completely closed here. The QE2 is currently sat off Durban. We won't let the QE2 in to resupply or do anything. All traffic stopped.
And American shipping in the Pacific or something's been basically knocked offline by the virus. That they're not in a position to use their battleships. The submarines are okay though because they're completely isolated. Yeah. So I was thinking, well, if China wanted to make a military move, now would be the time to do it, wouldn't it?
Well, the problem with the US is it's a crazy situation. You can't believe what's necessarily been said by the Chinese government, but let's be honest, can you believe what's coming out the US government either right now? And that's
Trump says fake news, says fake news.
So it's, but no, it's a bizarre situation. It was a bizarre situation.
So what are we going to do for good to make good come out of this at the end of it? Because it's beholden on everybody, especially this vast YouTube channel, to make a difference afterwards.
We must be keeping several people entertained at the moment.
Yeah, at least one person's being entertained. I've looked on whether I should start. I haven't started printing masks. I've got the capability. Funny enough, I looked at this today and went, okay, do I want to start printing stuff? But there's ups and downs with that. Everyone's doing this big print face mask, but you can only do it in non-absorbent materials, so it can't be PLA. It has to be PETG or ABS, and then there's issues around the face masks in the sense of you have to have the plastic to go around it as well. And I don't know, I think for me, I'm going to try and have a look at things a little bit different. I try not to get dragged into the rat race so much, but the reality is very, very different, unfortunately, and we're going to have to see what happens.
Well, our living costs have plummeted, which is fantastic.
It was already cheap over there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was.
Ours have gone up enormously. The amount of wine we're drinking is just incredible.
I know. Ours has gone. Mine's gone up, and it's crazy.
We can't buy alcohol here. If you get caught with alcohol in your car, you're in trouble. Here, if you get caught,
you're not allowed essentials.
No. Alcohol, cigarettes banned. Completely
interesting.
banned.
In New Zealand, they won't allow the butchers to open because food, but they are allowing the cigarette companies to continue manufacturing.
Need that tax, Bruce. That tax.
Because supermarkets can sell meat, you see. But what's happening, of course, is that price gouging is enormous over here. The supermarkets are saying, we can't possibly offer specials at this time because it would be too much stress and strain on our staff.
So instead of just saying,
they should have said, well, we'll give you a 5% discount at the till to make up for all the specials you're not getting. But no, with chickens selling for $30 a chicken here. There's been mince for $28 for half a kilo. The prices they're just gouging the snot out of things, supply and demand. And it's just outrageous.
The government here has ordered shops closed that are doing that. They've got people going around and they're price gouging. They've shut them. They
The
shut
UK
them,
is
and
trying to
the
stop it.
Spa franchise. If you're a Spa franchise and you do that, the government has ordered that you'll lose your franchise, or Spa can hoof it out the country.
Yeah.
Are
So
Spa big over there though? Because they used to be
yeah,
big. Yeah. Spa was
yeah,
everywhere in the UK at one point, you know, and
yeah. No, they are here. They are. Every town has a Spa. So
And
they're
supermarkets are making a killing at the moment. Excuse
Oh,
the pun.
they
But,
have.
I mean, they're not paying, or they've just put a bonus or an extra 10% on the wages of their staff. But man, they should be getting danger money. They should be getting a really big amount of money, because they're right at the front line in the face of not only the virus, but people that are off their trees because they don't understand things, you know, and they're taking it out on the supermarket workers. But I mean,
That's my
they're
son.
not getting anything extra, and I'm thinking this is terrible. You
I
know,
heard
give
a
them-
whisper in the UK. Aldi have of substantially increased their salary, but I don't know how true it is. And when I substantially, I mean they've doubled it. The whisper I'd heard is that they'd actually doubled it, and I hope it's true. It would be really good, and you know they pay very well already. They are much higher than the German Aldi and Lidl in the UK. Pay way higher than the likes of Tesco's and others like that. But I have heard a whisper they've doubled the salary of certain staff on the checkouts.
That raises an interesting question. What are going to be the jobs that are available when this all finished? I did that in my blog today. You know, what jobs are going to be the jobs to have?
Yes.
Supermarket checkout operators, that's certainly one. But what about other jobs? I mean, there's going to be such a dramatic cutback in the economies that any job would be great, but a lot of jobs are just going to disappear. And the New Zealand government's talking about investing huge amounts in infrastructure, basically government-funded work schemes and things to build things. That's what happened many years ago. They built a whole lot of dams. All the electricity infrastructure was built on that basis, and that's paid big dividends over the years. But they're going to basically employ people through work schemes and get the money going back into the community. But what jobs would you have? I mean, some of the jobs, like in the tourism industry, tourism is the second largest industry in this country. And it's going to be gone, completely gone. Even domestic tourism, people won't have the money to travel around on holiday. So that's a massive swathe of workers. And a lot of them are unskilled. It's like the service industry. These people that don't have degrees or qualifications for anything. What are they going to do? Sit on their bums and collect the unemployment?
Well, that's the interesting thing. People from our trade, if we say the drone and model airplane trade, are a pretty skilled bunch. They're a pretty skilled bunch with all their various. They're nerdy and they spend a lot of time in sheds fettling things, but they do have a great deal of. We set free Ian could work for the fire testing department, but generally people with this hobby are pretty skilled folks and needed in this new world.
I think
model airplanes.
I think commercial operators are going to have a problem because the housing market is on stop. I think a large amount of commercial operators rely on aerial photography for property sales, things like that. That's going to dry up for the foreseeable. And whilst property market does tend to kick back going, I don't think it's going to be on the left. If people are at work, they can't get mortgages and they can't buy homes, and there's a natural recession that falls with that. Are people then going to be looking to say, oh, I'd like a picture of my lovely large amount of land? Or because there's two aspects to aerial photography. There's the industrial aspect where people are doing surveying, stuff like that. And again, if businesses are cash strapped, using aerial surveying is one of those things that they're going to look at and go, do we absolutely need to do this, or can we continue our daily operations without doing this? So I think you're going to see a contrasting in the drone market on that side, and you're going to have a massive contrasting on the basic side where aerial photography and things like that. So I think we could see a lot of PFCOs fall off the radar in the next 2 years simply as a result, because they can't. There's been a lot of arguments on the groups whether they can work today, and I still think you probably can, but it's it depends what you're doing. But I do notice, and this is an observation, and it's something I want to mention on that as well. Remind me, Gary, on the PFCO. A lot of drone operators seem to have been in this as a retirement, or as I've seen a number of them that don't seem to have to work for a living. And I don't mean that in a nasty or bad way, but I have noticed there's a large number of people who've been attracted to this industry as a lifestyle choice as much as having a full-time business where I need to earn money. And don't get me wrong, that's not going to be the case for everyone, but I have seen a large number who seem to have either been close to retirement people who've just got involved, and the lack of work hasn't been a big issue for them. But obviously, on the flip side of that, you'll always have your guys who are trying to pay their mortgage out of it as well.
It'd be interesting. I think one of the growth areas is going to be in fixing stuff, because people won't be able to afford to buy new stuff, and input sort of because of the reduction in trade, countries won't have the overseas funds to purchase stuff from other countries for a long time. So the domestic repair industry is probably going to boom, and I think that's a good thing. We're going to have this right to repair thing's going to raise its ugly head again. But if I was going to set up any new business, it would be fixing stuff, because there's going to be a huge market for it, huge demand for it.
Yeah, I agree.
And the group of people that are in the model aircraft and drone world are generally pretty good at fixing stuff. They generally have
to fix stuff every weekend.
Because you build it and then it smashes into something, and then you build it again, or it sets itself on fire.
Grabs it out the sky. Yes.
On that CAA thing, one thing I should mention is, as part of the COVID, the CAA have given a 3-month extension to all commercial operators in the UK. So if you are a PFCO holder, if your renewal is from the 31st of March to the end of June, they are allowing you to have a 3-month maximum extension on that, basically. And they've put the document out on it, and it says, any authorizations that are due to renew between, expires on or before the 30th of June, they can be extended for an additional 3 calendar months. So that does give people a bit of breathing room with regards to doing it. The irony is we're all at home, so we can get the paperwork done to get it submitted. But it will give guys a bit more of a breathing room on that.
New Zealand's done the same. America's done the same. Here's done the same. Everyone has to. And Tian, who is part of SES News but is an airline pilot, is very lucky in that he had just done all his sims. He'd just done everything, and is now super current through until September.
But he's got anything to fly?
No, it's cargo. He's doing cargo. He's doing cargo now, all over the place, and in Airbuses. But they're not letting them off the aeroplane, so they land wherever, but they're not allowed off the aeroplane at all. They're not allowed out the cockpit. They're the crews when they land in various places in Africa. But they're of course everyone in the company has got to do their mandatory sims and their mandatory training that they have to do every year. And that's not happening. And I see in New Zealand that was one of the big things they say, because they say, because your airline pilots have to travel generally to the States to get it done. It's like, whoa! So there's all sorts of big carve outs for that. And I know that same word carve out reminds me that and another thing that to try and add 2 things in here. If you are a big manufacturer in China, you'll be watching out for the prohibitions that are coming in America about parts that can be used in stuff. And blow me down if the US military haven't carved out things like motors and speed controllers and this and that. And what you mean? All the parts that actually make the thing work. They're making exceptions for it left, right, and centre. So this whole great ban, well, it'll come to not much really. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say on that. But that might be another thing if you're sat in China to think, well, I'm not going to bother with that. They're just going to be fussy. I'm not going to bother with them.
Yeah, it's hard to say in it what's going to happen. You can't buy a component that's not made in China close to it. Everything to a point either goes through there, around there, it has involvement in there. There's been a new flight controller out today, I saw on Twitter actually, which is compliant for the US military, yet it's still the same components on the board. It's designed to be used with PX4, so it is an open source flight stack, so they'll be able to load on board whatever they want. However, it is funny that you get this, it has to be all in the US apart from everything you need.
Yes, exactly. Apart from all the bits you need to make it work. Yeah. And it's interesting, it was the military that carved out those, made sure they'd carved out those bits.
I think there's political and military on other arms, isn't there?
Well, we're talking about, what would even the biggest electric motor cost to someone that orders 500,000 of them? $4 or $5 or something like that. I don't know. Some big electric motor. It's good. You'd be very hard to stand up a factory in America to beat them at price. or make a profit. You couldn't just start making these things at those
It's
sort
like,
of numbers.
it's like the food on the supermarket shelves, made from imported and locally sourced ingredients. What does that tell you? Nothing.
Yeah. I think the realization came across their bows, if it was the Navy, that they couldn't do that. That there isn't a domestic supplier of enough of the bits. They just couldn't do it.
But the thing is, there could be. I mean, like, I'm just, while we're talking, I'm looking at this, which Ian will recognise, the little road thing, made in Australia. Who'd have thought? Made in Australia. It's actually got made in Australia written on it. You know, and
That's it.
Yeah, companies
Bloody
have the
hell.
ability.
I'd never have bought that if I'd have known that was the case.
Yeah, I know. It's full of koala bears and bloody dingo poo. It's terrible. But I mean, in New Zealand here, we used to make television sets and radios and stereos and all sorts of things. They were crap, but they were made locally, and there were household names like Pi and
Yes, I had a
all
Pi.
those things. Yeah, and AWA and things like that. And those businesses
a
just
Kiwi
shut down.
company.
AWA? No, it's Australia.
No, Pi.
Pi. No, Pi's English, but they had a set up. They had their manufacturing
Made
facilities
under
here and things. Yeah.
And
Fisher
Fisher
Thorn, you'd
Paykel.
recognise. Fisher and
Fisher
Paykel's New Zealand, yeah. But Thorn, that's an English one too, a horrible TX9 television set. But yeah, so there is the potential for countries to claw back that and to boost their own economies by starting to make this stuff again. They still have to have components, of course, but you can take this down lower and lower and lower to whatever level you need, and you can become self-sufficient even in the areas of technology. Because if you look at it, like Indonesia, there's a whole lot of really high-tech parts made in Indonesia, and some of these little almost third world countries are actually doing really high-tech stuff. So there's machines in New Zealand. We could effectively make some of our own integrated circuits if we wanted to. In fact, we have a company in Auckland that supplies ion implantation machines to Intel. So there's always the ability to bring this stuff back. And if we're going to be moving towards a less capitalist market, then there are benefits, social benefits to bringing this stuff back in, even if the price goes up. It's the money that you pay for that is going back into your own economy. It's not going offshore to another economy. In fact, who was it? There was some famous president in the USA was faced with the prospect of paying £10 or $10 a rail for railway lines that were made in the USA, or paying $5 a rail for railway lines that were imported from the UK. And he said, buy the $10 ones. Because if we buy the $10 ones, then the $10 stays in America. If we buy the $5 ones, we've lost $5. And so there's benefits to keeping your economy self-contained in that way. And I think government's going to wake up to that, possibly because they have to, because they just do not have the money anymore to import stuff.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And that is going to be the issue. We're going to have to see where it all lands. That's all we can do really on the flip side of it. You know, you're going to have very little drones releasing. I would not think, I wouldn't think we would see anyone release anything in the next month. I don't see this as a market to release a product into. Could be a broad market to announce a product into, I suppose, but not release.
And watch out for Ian's drone repair stores operating around the country under franchise.
Matt's budget, I think, is right here, Bruce. I was going to say Mads will fix it, but he needs to mess it up first. But I'll only fix it if you get me to break it.
You sure Mads will fix it? You sure on that branding? There might have connotations in that.
It could be misadvertising. But no, whatever that rumored DJI thing was, will we see that? I think they'll probably be bonkers to release it right now, because it's just going to go straight over everyone's head. Did anyone really notice the new iPad release last week? It sort of went pretty much over everyone's head, and it looks a good bit of kit, but it was just with everything going on, and that's the problem with anything right now, isn't it?
So we could see a lot of stagnation in terms of technological development, because companies won't have the money to pour into R&D, and there's no point in producing new products if no one's buying it. We might just be in stasis for a couple of years, and I wonder what that'll do.
Is it a bad thing?
LiDAR on the iPad says FX.
Yes,
Node.
it does.
Really?
Yes, it has a LiDAR camera on the rear. Yes, it does. On the new iPad Pro. It'll be interesting to see how well that works. I've seen some video of it.
Rescue helicopters flying overhead. First aircraft in I don't know how long.
Someone in the air. Yeah, it does. It's got LiDAR on the back. it's getting closer to becoming a PC. It now has my support as well.
What sort of LiDAR? Tell me about this LiDAR. Because I won't see. I don't allow Apple stuff in the house, so I don't follow any of it.
Let me have a look then. Let me have a look.
Is it a scanning LiDAR? And above and beyond, yes, DJI repair centers are closed.
Yes. Temporarily.
Temporarily. So what's
going to happen with all these crashing police drones?
Yeah. I think it's a week or two. Whatever's going on. That's what I read online.
Did that helicopter come in, or did he just keep going? Oh, you'll be at home.
I think he's flown overhead and gone to the hospital, I think.
It's got a LiDAR scanner on board, but the problem is, Gary,
what does that mean?
Yeah,
what does that mean?
It's capable of scanning devices. Let me just have a look.
Be for doing 3D, wouldn't it? Because like the iPhone, you can get 3D.
It's to do with the camera. Yeah, it's part of the camera system. So they're using it as part of breakthrough LiDAR scanner enables capabilities never seen before on a mobile device. Measures distance to surrounding objects up to 5 meters away. Works both indoors and outdoors and operates on the photon level with nanosecond speed. New depth of framework in iPadOS compares points measured on the LiDAR.
Well, there's a job for your rover, isn't it? With that stuck on it, mapping.
But are they going to use it just to make the background blurry?
Tony Northrup will have one in literally days. It'll be there. He'll be doing bokeh on a lever that we've never seen before. That's Bruce knows where I'm going with that one.
Yeah, he does.
Anyone
you need to subscribe to Mad's new camera stream.
We need to do this. Sorry, Bruce, I ran out of time this week.
That's okay, mate. Everybody's busy doing nothing.
Actually, I wish I was.
I'm super busy, aren't we?
I'm the only one.
You are the only one, you lazy git. Yeah.
I'm super busy too. I spent probably 10 hours going through my archive footage at real time to get 10 minutes of video to put up in one day. It's such a big job. It's unbelievable. I thought this would be easier. Just go through a few old files, but no, it's a major.
I am still working for a living, so yes, I'm still
definitely busy. For me, your videos are about the people, not the planes. The planes are with a hook.
That's why Top Gear comparison. It's just a foil for the people. But interesting, YouTube has started I put my community tab post up. All the comments were flagged as awaiting approval because I was thinking, well, people commenting. I've got a couple of hundred thumbs ups, no comments. So I went over to the wait pending approval thing. There's all these comments that YouTube has said, oh no, you can't have that. You've got to approve it manually. So you have to go through, click, click, click. YouTube is broken and there's no one to fix it.
Yeah,
there was a warning up from StreamYard before we started saying YouTube is broken. It did. It said something like, it might not work. It's kind of broken.
Yeah, it's tracking better this week. I've noticed. I don't know if you've noticed, Bruce. Views are coming back up slowly. We're not quite at the level. Well, no one watches my stuff anyway. So when that one person watches it's easy to track that one person.
Maybe your viewer had the virus.
Yeah, my viewer had the virus for 2 weeks. Yeah, he had the virus for 2 weeks and then he came back. But no, it is recovering slightly.
It's a handy service you offer of putting me to sleep on a Sunday night.
I didn't. Sorry about that. I couldn't do it this weekend, unfortunately. I was too busy polishing my bottom.
Well, anyway, moving on very swiftly.
Moving back to drones, we should talk about drones.
We should.
Right, something I didn't mention was the Autel Evo Dual. The pricing for that has now been announced, or not announced, but leaked because you can't buy it off their website. It's going to be through dealers only or Banggood, just like any commercial dealer. Banggood. It's going to be $10,000 for the 640 resolution dual. So all of this talk that they've outdone DJI, they've outdone Parrot, it's not really a comparable machine. It's an entirely different sensor. It's an entirely different thermal sensor. There's going to be a 320 and a 640 version. The 320 is nearly $6,000 and the 640 is going to be around $10,000 to $11,000. Neither are radiometric, and there is no radiometric option either. So it is not going to be any good for proper inspection purposes. And it's a lot.
Do we see that FLIR's actually sold their first set of Black Hornets?
Yeah,
which is extraordinary because they've had that company for a long time. So you'd think they'd have sold a few of those by now.
I'm shocked Fleur haven't released a proper drone. They are the company who has the unique technology. The drone bit is easy.
Well,
that's the easy bit.
Tell that to GoPro.
Yeah,
but remember, Fleur, the real proper Fleur gear is ITAR protected.
Yes.
And even they wouldn't even allow, when they did a load of research in the Kruger National Park about spotting animals and false positives and whatever, they brought a PC-12 in with the big ball turret to go and look at the animals and look for poachers at night. And the one that they were allowed, the ball turret that was allowed to come here, wasn't good enough, wasn't up to the job. So even with huge backing, they couldn't get the really proper sensors here. So
yeah.
I think that's their problem. They're always going to be, they are better sensors, but they will be caught up. But they're not allowed to send them out. They've got the ITAR issue.
They got the US. You know, they could serve the home market, and they could charge extraordinary money for that as well, and the government would pay it because it's an American company. It's, you know, I am shocked they've never just produced something. You know, DJI outdid everyone with the Mavic Dual. No, from a thermal point of view, $2,700. It was okay, wasn't perfect. Now, obviously, Autel have taken this really to the next level and are really giving you a camera more like the XT or the XT2 in a smaller platform. But are government agencies going to spend $10,000 on a Chinese-made?
No, because they're not allowed to buy it.
That is the problem. And even if they were, would they spend that money on something that small compared to, say, an M200 or something like that? So I find it's a weird product to release.
What sort of money does the M200 go for then?
Well, the aircraft is about... The aircraft isn't expensive, it's the camera. And I think the XT2... I think you could equip an XT2 for around 12 to 14. I'm sure you could.
And you'd have that little bit more capable machine then.
Yeah. DJI XT2 price. There's no official price released on these because you have to go to a dealer, but someone will have one. Let's have a look.
Arion Labs expected to hear more. Yeah, they did. And then what happened with that? I can't remember. They did buy them. Then didn't they jump? Didn't Boeing pull the rug under that deal with the Urban Air Mobility? I think. Oh, and above and beyond, he'll be having his hangout directly after us on his channel. So watch out for that, dear viewer. I think that's tonight.
Ian, were you still looking for a camera with an HDMI out?
Yes, and I found one. Oh, good. You got the SJ Cam. Does it actually work on that one?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It seems to. Yeah.
I've had a few SJ Cams with their fake ports. Do you know what I mean? They use the port, but it's analog, not.
Yeah, but you've got to be careful because there's a lot of SJ Cam knockoffs too. A lot of the ones that say SJ Cam are actually made by the one hung low.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. 1974. Yes.
Let's get Yes Minister on, shall we, Gary, just to finish it off?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I do like a bit of the Yes Minister.
I've been watching a bit of it because some of it relates to Corona, quite funny. There's a couple of things where there's one, how do you handle it? And he goes, well, it's too early to do anything at this moment. We'll wait and see what happens.
Yeah, there's the different stages of denial.
The four stages of denial, isn't it? And then we would have loved to have done something, but it's too late now.
Yes, you could apply that to anything. Loads of things they say can be applied to anything. It is timeless classic. That is a timeless classic.
There was a comment on it. I watched the one about Europe, and there was a comment about why each country joined, and just the comment about Germany, as wrong as it was, made me laugh. And the term they used was just they're applying for readmittance to the human race, and I just cried. It was just very funny. You know, not appropriate, but very funny.
Well, it's 30 years ago. It would have been more appropriate, as it were. Yeah, it's. I think I feel we're floundering a little here. What other story? Let me have a look at this. Just news. A repository of news for drone.
Rover.
Apparently,
drone news is a bit on the slack side. You know, I dug up as much as I could this week. but
Well,
it is.
the police are abusing them in the UK to annoy people, aren't they?
Yeah,
And I saw a footage on the Daily Mail, so it must have been true. Some policemen. There were two policemen. One was the drone operator, and he had his thing with the little LCD screen, and the other one was standing beside him. And they were walking across a road, and they had the drone flying 2 meters in front of them and 1 meter above their heads. And I'm thinking, what is the point? I mean, like it's a meter above their heads. Yes. What can you see through your LCD that you cannot see with your eyes? And I'm thinking it takes two of them to fly the thing as well. It's just crazy.
This is the issue. It's got a bit of a police state over here, but it's interesting to see how much drones are being used for good. You know, I did think about going and spraying the streets with bleach or doing something like that, but I think I'd probably get arrested for other kinds of issues.
But none of that's proven, is it? People are rushing to go out and do that, and people are emailing me every day and saying, which big spraying system are you going to buy? And I just say, well, tell me it works. Prove it works before that.
Ian, you're just endangering the thin white line.
That's the one that runs in the middle of the road. Yeah, the bleach. It'll just attack it. You know, I saw a Rover this week, which was quite interesting because it had all UV lights on it, and that was autonomous, and it was driving around the room. And obviously, UV is meant to kill it. But again, how much of that is, you know, is it going to get, you know, if you shine a UV light on a surface, is it going to instantly kill everything that there is? It.
There has to be sufficient intensity to be ionizing and cause breakdown of the RNA.
But isn't it wonderfully simple? And I think it probably is right that just not seeing people and staying away from folks is probably just about as effective as you can get without spending bajillions.
And if UV was that effective, then it wouldn't exist outside, would it? Daytime would kill it all.
So
it's like this 5G stuff. I don't know how many posts I've seen from people saying, this 5G, it's going to kill us all, it's going to fry our brains. And because it's so many gigahertz, you know, it's because it's so many gigahertz, and the more gigahertz, the more it's likely to kill you. And I'm saying, well, go and look up the frequency of visible light and go and stand in the sun for a day. Don't they teach kids anything at school these days? I don't know.
No, because guess who the teacher is?
You. That's all clear now.
Exactly. That explains a lot, doesn't it?
And tetrahertz is not a frequency that comes in a little cardboard package.
No. Very good. Very, very good. Yeah, it is. It's terrible that these things and thoughts and things can flourish. 30 years ago, 100 years ago, you could have had these nut job thoughts, and you would have struggled to connect with somebody else to continue that thought moving. But now, oh my hat, you know, it is ridiculous what's been saying, and unfortunately, based around hope and positive thoughts, people are putting stuff out there, but they're just being fished for their attitudes and their propensity for sharing stuff for ultimate marketing in the end. And it's just
they're so stupid. People are now connecting the virus to 5G, and they're saying what's happening is the powers that be, this is the one I heard this morning, the powers that be are forcing us all to get inoculations, and inside the inoculations are little nanobots, and when they turn on the 5G network will all come under the brain control of the government. I'm thinking, seriously, you've read far too many comics.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
It's funny. I have seen one drone story where there's a company. Where is I just found it now? Where are these? It was over by you, Bruce. No, sorry, Canadian company is working.
It's Arian Labs with the university in Australia, and they were already working on something. But Arian Labs have again, there they are. Fleurbot Arian Labs. They have jumped into full hype mode over it.
To measure people's temperature by drone, and you go in. Well, if you look at most of these thermal images are between 3 and 5 degrees of accuracy. Then put distance involved, you know. So you know, if you had 3 degrees, temperature's either 36. It says he's 39. At 36, he hasn't got it. At 37, he might have it, and at 39, he does. So that's not going to work either, is it? You know.
And if you're sweating, you've got a different elasticity to your skin, and there's all those factors. It's crazy.
Plus, we need to start bouncing laser IR readings off people at high speed.
Especially pilots.
But then all the televisions will change channel. We can't have that. That'll be,
Yeah.
more Channel 4. Give them lots of Channel 4. Channel 4 is the solution. Yeah,
So
no,
I did see that. I did see that story, but it wasn't a lot,
But I think perhaps the rush to 5G will slow down, and the rush to nonsense with that will happen.
Will it slow down? Because this is very interesting. The internet usage has gone through the roof. Of course, everyone's sitting at home watching Netflix and pornography. So the internet stood up, but I think people are going to realize, hey, I wish this was faster. Maybe 5G is a good thing, and maybe it'll put more pressure on ISPs and telcos to actually ramp up their bandwidth, because if this happens again, they want to be able to provide more bandwidth.
The one good thing with 5G, and funny enough, I've helped a friend this week set up 4G broadband because he lives somewhere that doesn't get proper normal broadband. And the interesting thing is, in the UK, we've got this bit of a racket where you have to pay for a telephone line to be able to have a broadband connection. I'm not sure how it is in other countries. So in the UK, you have to pay for the telephone line aspect, even if you don't use it. I don't even have a house phone plugged in my house. I'm paying £16 a month for the physical privilege of having that line, and then you pay your broadband on top. Now, you normally have a bit of a deal to combine the two and things like that, but the one thing 5G will do is take that aspect out, and our telecom provider have had a bit of a racket on this for a very, very long time, and they did have the lines opened up about 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer. It used to be all owned by BT, and then they had what they called the local loop unbundling, which meant other providers could put their equipment in the exchanges and have access to the infrastructure. But we still have this racket of you have to have a phone line, and that's the one thing 5G will help.
Yeah, naked DSL is a thing here, fortunately. And we've been very privileged, very lucky, because our conversion to fibre is almost complete. And just at the right time, we've got such a robust backbone that we've had no real, within the country, no internet issues at all. It's overseas that things seem to be happening. I know YouTube is cutting back on its bit rate, and Netflix is cutting back. But here in New Zealand, it's been on local sites and some of the main sites, it's been as fast as ever. You can tell when it's congested overseas. If you do a trace route, you can see where the delays occur. But within New Zealand, it's great, and everyone's been sitting at home watching Netflix in 4K, happy as a pig in swill.
Well, the one of the two big cables come down from Europe to us via the seaside, and one of them got cut just outside of flipping England. I don't know if you've ever heard of the country, but it sounds to me like it's going to the wall, and they can't even keep the internet cable working for Africa. It's cut like 6Ks off England.
So Bruce, are you fibre to premises or fibre to cabinet? Because we're fibre to cabinet over here. So
we're fibre to the home. I've got fibre just about 2 feet away, the fibre termination.
Nice. So the UK really pushed the fibre to cabinet, which works really well, to be fair. So my cabinet's about 400 yards down from my home. I know where it is. I stood there the day they put in, saying to the guy, get on with it, because I want my connection. But we get about 80 meg based on that, because obviously all they did is move the Dislam into the cabinet rather than down at the exchange, and basically you're only using the last couple of 100 yards of copper rather than that. They have introduced a large amount of fibre to premises, but it's not prevalent.
Yeah, I get about 100 megabytes, a gigabit down, and uploads are about 600 to 700 megabits. So
wow.
And then you log into YouTube to upload a video, and it crawls because YouTube can't suck that fast out of the straw. So
I'm just gonna do some calculations to do mine. Hang on a minute. It's gonna take a little bit of a while.
Take one, right?
Hang on. There's a bit of this, bit of this.
There's a lot of water to keep the string wet.
I'm going to come up with a number. Can you see that number? And that's actually is 2.3 normally, but yeah, whatever, people, whatever. Yeah, there is another local provider just stood up, and we might get 100 meg line once they swing the dish this way. At school, we have 100 meg line, and we have 250 devices on it. It's actually 263, but
it's going to be slow.
So when all the children are working, it comes to a complete and utter stop. And it's multi-hop from Durban. It's multi-hopped, 3 hops, radio link from 150 k's away. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
When I was young, we had 300 baud acoustic coupled modems. Those were the days. You had to dial a number by hand, and it was engaged, and then you finally get through. And transferring files would take weeks. It was fantastic. Oh, kids don't know how good they
I was
got
there
it
as
today.
well. I am a lot older than I look.
Is that possible?
Yeah, is that possible? Exactly.
I think that's been about the drone news this week. I've not seen. Oh, I did see something else that I ignored.
Oh yeah,
Something to do with Drone Safe Register offering something to do with COVID-19, not to spread it.
Yes, they did. And then there's that other company that went pop last November, and I saw one fellow has only just worked out that they've gone pop, and they bought 10 training licenses for them, and I can't remember their name now. And then how do I get my money back? Well, you should have been paying attention.
I've thought of a business opportunity: disinfectant for your drone. Hey, there's got to be a market for that. $10 a bottle, like hand sanitizer, but you use it on your arms.
You just rub it out.
Well, all around the world, scams are standing up.
Well, they did that with there was a special cream you could get to keep your phantom arms white, wasn't there? Someone was selling a special drone cleaner to keep the phantom plastic white. Yeah, there was. It was on Amazon, I think. Yeah, it might still be there. You should look for it.
Yes, well, yeah, there's many things, and many of the COVID-19 press releases are exactly that, just utter. The new version of Pix4D came out. Pix4D's come out today with all sorts of very fancy whistles and bells. It's probably the most successful bit of software in the industry, and that's also bad time to be releasing it, kids.
It's the licensing. It's good stuff, Pix4D, to be fair. And what they're doing is creating a large amount of good work. You don't have to be that technical to be able to use it, but the problem is it then builds a layer of users who don't necessarily know what they're doing, and it can also make them look bad as well. The output doesn't, if you don't know how to use it, but they're getting better and better. They really are.
But if you know what you're doing, it's a very, very cool bit of kit, and it works very, very well. So it works fine for surveyors. And but then, earlier you mentioned guys that are using this as a retirement job or whatever. You don't really need it. Should they really be offering that service? Because they're not offering the service that the real user or power user is, and the power user in this instance is a surveyor who the drone is just another hammer. It's just a fancy pencil in his toolkit that gets him to a point of valuable data. And not only that, he can sign it off. And that's the trouble. You can't sign off. I don't know, certainly here, if you measure 2 points on the earth and you use it for legal purposes, you have to be a surveyor. You can't just sign off work as being true and fit for purpose and whatever. And I think that's going away in the industry. I think that's going away now. But it needs.
If you look at Pix4D mapping, it is currently €216 a month, as it is today. Or
I know people that make €500,000, €1 million a month mapping stuff. So it's a mere bagatelle.
It does.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a bagatelle, and it gets a lot of the work done.
Yes,
I
it
build
does.
my own drones with a camera controller. Richard, camera controller. I'm not sure where. Which Joy is saying he likes to build his own drones, but camera control is the issue. Yeah. Of course, Canon cameras are always pretty easy to fire, and you can fire stuff from there.
Sony's a much better now. There's a good commander for Sony. Sony has much better commander, but you're not going to easily get the level of integration you used to, say, from a DJI. You can fire the shutter, you can start recording. This is the camera manufacturers at fault. It's been an argument. Everyone's they have no interest in the drone industry at all. They could simply solve all of this by introducing MagLink or CAN bus. That's all they need to do, is introduce one of two standards, which they won't. It's doable because take DJI, Zinyu, they all get around this for their gimbals. I've got both gimbals over here, and they do control the camera, so it is doable. But it's not easy, and there isn't anyone really making gimbals for aerial aircraft that have got the expertise to dig into it as much as well. And
So
that's
those
you know.
gimbals connect. Those gimbals have a connector to the camera to control camera
yes,
functions.
USB.
Why
Yeah.
doesn't someone put a bus pirate on there and reverse it and put an
Yeah.
Arduino and just do the translation?
The problem is no one. It just doesn't seem to be anyone pushing for it on the you know, Grimsy.
I was going to say Grimsy. They seem to be getting there, aren't they?
They are, but this, it seems, you know, if you look at, in a very short period of time, all of the gimbal manufacturers have done this. They've done it. It's available. It's all working. It's all here. Yet we're not seeing it in the aircraft gimbal side. And DJI basically don't make gimbals anymore, for the most part, other than handheld ones. So you're not going to see them do it either.
What's this going to do to the price of Chinese products? Because the US dollar's taken a tumble. Most currencies have fallen. So if when we do get back to normal, if the US currency remains low, are these drones going to even be affordable? Because that's another factor that's going to work against sales, isn't it? And not only do people not have the money, but the money they do have isn't worth as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've been dropped into junk status now by all the people that do that sort of thing. So our money is worth really nothing. Joy on joys.
To write extra zeros on your banknotes like Zimbabwe did.
They're all way too cheap at the moment. Let's be honest. The Mavic, if you take the Mavic even at 1,700 quid, it's probably way too cheap for what it is. It's a, you know, if you think cutting edge technology, you were paying £1,200 for the top of the range smartphone. So for a couple of $100 more, it'll fly around up to 5 kilometers and fly back, because technically it's a smartphone.
So will the Mavic get Facebook? I don't think it does.
No, no. It probably could if you hacked it, but they probably should be a lot more than they are. Let's be honest. You know, the higher end stuff should be. You know.
You only have to look back a few years and realize how much this stuff used to cost to realize how cheap and what good value it is now.
Yeah, you know, I was funny enough. A company
for an autopilot.
Yeah, you know, the you know, for the autopilot today, the Cube is about $250, and that goes through a huge amount of testing before it even reaches a customer. There's a new autopilot released today, $199. You could pick up cheap flight. You know, you're buying these race flight controllers for $20, $30.
Well, back when Missile Man was functioning, that the simplest thing you'd have started playing at $10,000. The GPS would have cost you $600 or $700. But that was the rush for this, the peace dividend of this world, isn't it? Is the price has just crashed.
I think I paid $110 US for the GPS and the cruise missile project, and now you can pick up one of the little tiny B220s for like $11 or something silly, and it's far more capable with a 10 hertz refresh rate, and just unbelievable.
Yeah, all bands, you know, all modes, all satellite.
It gets our Russian friends, and when Galileo is working, it gets that sometimes. If the ground stations are up,
it's I was one of
microphone, Ian.
A microphone, Ian. Yeah. Speaking, Ian.
Wrong button. I got two buttons. I got one on here as well. Until the Italians go, we can't be bothered, and then go home. But they're a bit tied up at the moment anyway, the poor buggers.
Yes.
But no, as you say, I think price rises probably across the board. It's the reality of life. Volumes go down, costs go up. So if people are not buying, selling will be less. Therefore, cost of production increases because you reduce the volume.
On the bright side, there'll be a lot of cheap second-hand gear on the market.
It has to be running now.
Some of it will need fixing.
Yeah. Don't send it to me.
Apparently, here in New Zealand, camper vans are going for a song because so many of the tourism companies that operate camper van fleets, they know they're not going to be doing anything.
Oh, wow.
And so they're just basically flooding the market with them. You'd probably pick them up for half the price you normally would.
Wow. Because I'd love to go to New Zealand one day. Now's the time to find somebody, I don't know, with some sort of storage or place on an airfield where they could keep a cheap camper van. And then, if only I could do that, that would be great. Yeah. Only had the money, but but otherwise, New Zealand's a pretty expensive place by virtue of its distances.
Yeah, not virtue of its distances, but it's an unusual economy because people everyone that comes from elsewhere goes, man, it's so expensive here. And it is expensive, but it gets even more expensive because our average wage is significantly lower than other countries' average wage. So if people coming from the UK and the USA and places where they earn good money think it's expensive, imagine what it's like for people that live here. The standard of living it's a very good lifestyle, but the standard of living isn't as good as most other countries.
What's the average wage over there? No, it's not average, but let's say a store manager. What would a store manager earn?
You might get $40,000 New Zealand, but if you look at that, that's £20,000, less than £20,000, and it's not good money. And when you look at the price, when we have all this
house price
food,
is huge, aren't they?
Oh, it's amazing. You can put the median price, I think, or the average price in Auckland at the moment is nearly $1 million for an entry-level house. It's just crazy. The property ladder has just exploded because in New Zealand there's this whole culture that the way people go is, in most countries, if you've got a bit of spare money, you might buy some stocks or bonds or something and invest into productive enterprise. In New Zealand, people buy a rental property and they rent it out. So property becomes the currency of investment. So the demand for property pushes the prices up enormously, but property isn't a productive investment. It doesn't generate any money as such unless someone buys it. And all you're doing then is basically stealing from future generations who have to pay 10 times what something's worth to get it. Whereas in the States and other countries, people tend to invest in productive enterprises that create a product or a service that is sold for a profit, and therefore it's actually increasing the value of the total economy. It might earn export dollars, but property, it is a dead investment. It's just it's borrowing from future generations, and that's really why we're in the situation we're in now.
That's one of the things that might get leveled out after this when values are.
Well, that's true, because there was an article in the paper this morning saying that with the destruction of our tourism industry, there's going to be a lot of Airbnb properties going on the market because people can't let them out, so they're going to sell them. So that hopefully now the supply will come up to meet or surpass the demand. That'll push prices down, which means it'll be a vicious circle, because that means a lot of the property investors who have over leveraged will now be with negative equity. And they'll have to try and realize some cash even just to meet the monthly outgoing. So they might have to sell some of their properties. And it's going to be extremely interesting. We could see a massive normalization of property prices here. So if you're heavily vested in property, it's not a good time.
Well, let's hope so. I hope it sees an end. This is social ranting night tonight, isn't it? But I truly hope it sees an end to the nonsense jobs that people have, the nonsense people. That's why I put a nonsense LinkedIn thing next to my name. The nonsense jobs that people have. What do they really do in the real world? Let's hope it does line up the doctors, the nurses, the people in the shops, the farmers, the people that we actually all rely on. Let's hope we do start valuing them a little.
Yeah, it's not the CEOs. It's not the CEOs. It's not the money lenders. It's not the banks that are going to save the planet. It's the janitors and the nurses and the people that basically keep us safe.
that are already doing it. And it's not that their circumstances have super changed. They've actually been running the planet before this started happening, and they were just massively undervalued. So let's hope.
Yeah, I'm not a socialist, but I've always I couldn't believe it that people do jobs that I would never do. Boring, mind-numbingly dull jobs, or jobs dealing with filth and human waste and things, and they get paid a pittance compared to the people who sit in a nice shiny office all day and get cups of tea brought to them and just tap a few keys. And I'm thinking, where is the justice and where's the equity in this? It's like, I think people who are paid shouldn't be paid according to the value of their job to their employer, but their value to society, and that's a huge difference.
I might lose here, so I'm going to shut up.
Especially these bloody Welsh people with their drones. I got no doubt with them.
Yeah. You're going to get a medal for services to the fire industry for calling them out all so much. And things like that.
He's on a subsistence diet.
Set it on fire recently. I've been doing a lot. Not one of my 3D printers has gone on fire yet. Touch wood. Yet.
No, but there's going to be some changes, and there has to be. There absolutely has to be. After all of this.
Yeah, it'll be nice if YouTube recover. I was just looking. Funny enough, while you guys were talking, I was just looking. It is having an effect on real people's real lives, and we're all at home. Yet no one's watching YouTube apparently.
They are, but they're not watching the stuff we make.
They're
watching all the conspiracy videos, and because YouTube's hyping all this stuff up. They're watching all the mainstream news media, and that's why the mainstream news media can monetize their COVID-19 videos, and we can't. They're focusing on the big corporations delivering that stuff. So most people are just going looking for news stories. They're not looking for entertainment so much.
No.
They have announced packages for advertising, $350 million, I think it was, to go towards to allow small businesses to pay for advertising, because obviously websites like ours is still 65% down on last year, and YouTube, because the millions I earned on that, it's just evaporated.
Yeah, but it's interesting in New Zealand that they've declared the media to be an essential service, but only broadcast media and print media, not online. Like I'm New Zealand's longest running blog, and I entertain people every day and keep them updated with all sorts of information. But I'm not an essential service. I can't go and do the things that some little tiny town rag that's basically good for nothing except fish and chips. They can do their business because they're important, because we understand the print media, but we can't understand blogging and things that have been going on for a quarter of a century. Oh no.
Well, but the trouble is, every man and his dog can say I'm a blogger and whatever, therefore let me through. Put a blue light on the car, start driving quickly, and all that sort of thing. I mean, there's not much of a barrier to entry, is it, to say you're a vlogger? Whereas people with and you have got the website. It's true, yeah. I suppose history does help you there, and press passes.
But interesting, Roddy has started his own publishing empire. He's now printing out A4 sheets of paper and dropping them in his neighbours' letterboxes to get them advice. So he's in the media too.
Printing, that's a quaint idea.
Yeah, I thought that's not a good idea, Roddy. If you've got this disease and you're spreading it with your little bits of paper, what are you doing?
Yeah. Now we are definitely ranting. We're definitely ranting to the poor 15 people that are here. And I hope wherever you are in the world, you're surviving in whatever way you can and are safe, and your friends and family are safe. Some awful stories coming out of all of this, but I think we should draw a line under this and hope that something more exciting happens in this next week. So we
are getting some stuff done. We're getting some, I've been building the rover this week. I've got a video coming up on that. I've done all of the paneling and everything. I put a tweet up the other day. Where is it? I've lost it. Oh no, it's here next to me. I've lost it and it's next to me.
Driven off.
I've actually taken the bloody wheels off it this time, so
you wobbled it.
Yeah,
are you running out of USB ports or something?
No, I just don't want it to climb away from me again. But I have been 3D printing all of the panels. It's got the Lightwave sensor built into the front. Everything is now sealed up, so it's now looking more battled, armor ready.
It's just like a Volvo. It's boxy, but it's good.
It's boxy, but it's good. But yeah, she's getting this. She's getting this. So
and those motors have got encoders on them, I suppose.
No, these are not encoded. So okay. There's not full support. There is and there isn't. I try to remember this. ArduPilot does have support for it now, but the benefits are minimal. The cost is massive. On
are
each
they steppers or just regular motors?
These are DC but gearboxed. It's still a bit too quick, unfortunately, for my liking. It can shift.
At your age, everything's a bit quick, isn't it?
Yes,
that's just skid steering then.
But yes, so skid steering. So where am I going? I'm trying to find the middle bit. So yeah, but I had to print the top in 2 sections. This is actually custom made in 2 bits because I couldn't print it in one large bit. So actually I had to I printed it in 1 bit and it gave me a problem, and the problem is you then have failure rate issues, and when you're printing a piece this big and if 1 bit of it fails, it's just a massive waste. So I ended up having to redesign it so it actually clips together as 2 separate parts, so at least if one half failed, the other half didn't. But it's got the hole in for the rover. I've got to get the camera, and I'm going to mount a mount on for the camera, and this
single GPS.
Yeah, I'm not going to go for dual. There's no point having blending on a rover. If the compass fails, it's not really going to sail off into the sunset, is it?
So do you print your holes in ABS or PET?
This is PETG. So I pretty much do everything now in PETG that's structural.
He missed that, didn't he?
No holes. I like printing holes.
yeah. I've got. You can see my invisible printer for those behind me here. Yes.
Yeah.
It's what I always use.
Yeah, rails. Yeah, PETG, Bruce, most of my stuff. ABS, cross between ABS and PETG. There's a bit of ABS on there, in not ABS, sorry, PLA in various places. Nothing structural, but PETG there's no point printing ABS anymore. You mostly don't need it. PETG is so good now. You may as well not bother with all of the hassle that comes with ABS. It's just not worth it. It's just, unless you have a specific need, a very specific need. And to be honest, to do ABS well, you need to permanently set your printer up that way in a permanent temperature controlled enclosure and do it and keep the environment the same all the time, because it's a total pain in the ass. It really is.
I've heard it said of Bruce that he has very specific needs.
I'm proud of that.
Yeah. And on that note, I'll say cheerio, dear viewers. Cheers, everyone. Cheers, chaps. Thanks very much. We'll see you all next week. Look after yourselves. 2100 GMT. Take care. Bye-bye. Now I've got 2 buttons. Here we go. Bye-bye.